Welcome to SHOWstudio's live panel discussions. In these discussions, experts from all parts of the industry discuss and debate the most important Fashion Week shows of the season. Today, in the midst of Paris Haute Couture, we're going to be discussing Giambattista Valli. I'm going to let my fine panel here introduce themselves for once.
Hi, I'm Anabel. I'm a fashion journalist and also the founder of the Psychology of Fashion and Psyche.
Hi, I'm Fabian Kiz-Juhasz, and I'm a designer.
Hi, I'm Jake, and I'm a freelance fashion journalist.
So, do we feel this is a different way of showing couture? And I guess the big question is it relevant and do we like it? Anybody going to kick off with a strong opinion?
I do feel like it's an interesting way to show it, because I think a lot of couture designers kind of admit themselves that they're showing it as kind of like a piece of art rather than something that's necessarily going to be bought. So I think the idea of kind of bringing public into the exhibition and kind of reviving that whole kind of magic around fashion is quite a nice thing. We talked about Giambattista kind of democratizing fashion with the H&M collection. I thought it was a really beautiful way to kind of like show that to the public and I guess bring a little bit of that excitement and kind of magic back to fashion, at least in my eyes.
It's kind of interesting that he says of himself that he's not trying to be edgy or the flavor of the day or, you know, innovative in that sense, but this is sort of an innovative move. So that's an interesting sort of dynamic how he chose to do this, but the clothes themselves are really traditionally like couture.
Does anyone think it was a move towards... There were no notes that came with it. The only notes that came with it were about the fabrics and the descriptions of the outfits. In my mind, I wondered if it was a step towards sustainability. You know, for the last year, fashion has had to make steps to make changes. I would love to think it was about sustainability. Any other thoughts on that?
If it is, and he's not making a big deal about it, or he's not sort of capitalizing on that, I think that's great. That is just a genuine gesture rather than like a publicity stunt.
I agree. I think that shows integrity that he didn't feel the need to use the word, as so many are. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you'll get like entire pages of notes saying what a brand is doing to like make things sustainable, and the overall takeaway is they're not changing that much. I
mean, I guess it would be slightly hypocritical to do a collection with H&M and then be like, hey, look at my sustainable couture collection, when it's a given that couture is sustainable anyway.
Yeah.
I think it was about also just like it was a democratic move in making that, you know, I guess giving access to the beauty of couture to more people, and I think maybe that's what H&M was always meant to do, and same with giving access to the public to see and come up close to the collection.
I don't really think that this is that surprising or crazy for couture. Like, there's so much work that goes into this. Like, why wouldn't you show it? Like, it reminds me of when Riccardo Tisci did his first couture for Givenchy, and he did an exhibition instead of a show, because there was so much artwork that went into the beading and the embellishment. He wanted to show it off for more than 20 minutes. So I think this is like a sensible way to do it.
And there was more applique in this collection than I'd ever think been. You know, we all know Valli for, you know, reams and reams and reams of tulle, and obviously they were present, but there was some more interesting work in this.
Which I think is great because they kind of really are the clothes that you want to see up close. Like, even fashion show, the format is so you're in and then you're out and you have maybe a page of notes to work with and a few photos. It's like, especially couture, like it merits more kind of time, and you want to really take your time and look at the beading and see what the details are.
What do we feel about the photos that were released? So not the exhibition, so all the photos that have been released into the sort of wider media audience?
I really like them. I think he achieved what he wanted to do. You know, give a nod to Abaddon and Irving Penn and people who shot with that, you know, fisheye lens. And it did really give that whole, you know, Truman Capote swans thing life. And yeah, I think he achieved what he wanted. It still felt fresh and modern and really slick to me.
Like, as you touched on it before we started, like at first I thought that maybe it was Tim Walker because it was so reminiscent of his work, but they didn't release the name of the
No, they haven't released the name of the photographer. did look very Tim Walker-esque,
Yeah.
I think, but I think it's that Avedon reference. I kind of feel like it's slightly, this is what I feel like it's an entire Vogue shoot of the entire collection. It's doing it in this format rather than the sort of usual, sort of as we're used to, flat on catwalking image. I wonder if it will put high-end magazines off slightly, because they're like, well, everyone's seen it, how we'd shoot it. It's a brave move, whether or not it's, you know, he's kind
Hanging
of
off a
shut that
fire
down.
escape in Brooklyn. There's many ways to hang that. Might I suggest?
I guess he was like, well, I have to show the clothes because this is what I'm doing instead of a show, but they don't want it to be too boring, but they don't want it to be like a campaign where it's like something super conceptual, and this is like a good in-between of like, it's a white background, it's a lookbook, but it's a bit interesting with the fisheye and like the perspective.
I guess it's also like a move for control as well. Like you really want to kind of like control your vision. And so many kind of like emerging brands now do that through Instagram because they cast and shoot it themselves. And then I guess they'll be open to reinterpretation, but
Yeah, like, is it more controlling than having you choosing the models and the venue and the set? Like, it sort of does the same thing, but in a different way, I guess.
Does anybody have obviously because there's only 2 models, casting becomes, you know, kind of a big deal, because, you know, you're looking only at 2 versions of women, a woman of color and a Caucasian woman, both of them being
Very small.
very young. To me, I'm assuming, you know, couture keeps its customers very close to its heart, but I'm assuming there are, you know, there's kind of fewer couture customers of this age than there are of, you know, 40 plus. And it still troubles me that we're selling clothes to women of a certain age on teenage girls, because with an opportunity like this, you could have, like Balenciaga do, their casting is just, to me, absolutely spot on. I know that there's the Varley girls and there's, yes, the H&M girls, but why not could it be inclusive to be an amazing older woman, older model?
Like Fatmans or even Simone Bercha with her shows, like they could find women who would fit the brand, I guess. I know that his thing is all about like making couture young and like for a younger clientele, but I don't know how many young women are out there who spend this kind of money. Yeah.
One thing I really felt, because there's a picture on Instagram, I forgot who posted it exactly, but it's Giovanna Battaglia, Lauren Santo Domingo, and Bianca Brandolini sitting in front of, I think they were named their dresses, I'm not sure if that was factual or not, but they're sitting in front of their dresses, and then there are these mannequins, and I would even have preferred if why had they not just put them on, like, or had them walking around, because, you know, they're still, you know, a lot more real, and they're great ambassadors for the brand, so that would have been nice.
yeah, it ties into this really problematic thing of like fashion being about fantasy, and fashion kind of like that fantasy is still being associated with youth. And it's like, we kind of see ageism kind of across the board as well. And when you have like an older model in a campaign, or you will have like an icon in a campaign, it will be someone usually that's kind of famous independent of their kind of model status in that context. Like Joan Didion for Celine, for example. It's one of those things that we kind of need to move away from it. But I think there's also a lack of understanding as to who the couture client really is. Because it's so kind of shrouded in mystery, it's quite difficult to even pinpoint who would realistically buy these clothes anyway. I'd like to see more information on that, really.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, if you flip it to the Chanel show, I kind of felt like whilst there was some, you know, moments, you know, there's sort of that ingenue with the white socks and little booties, but, you know, and then you go over. And then you go over to Dior, and you've got these kind of brown satin, what did you call them earlier?
Mother of the bride looks.
And so I guess everybody is defining their client. And Varley, I still feel that many ages of women could wear these and feel fantastic in them. I don't think they really kind of define an age. I just wish that the casting would represent that.
I agree.
Like, this is such a huge missed opportunity to include someone maybe like Rihanna in the pictures, who is a big celebrity client. It's great publicity, and it would cut out the middleman of like someone who's not a size 0 and someone who's not 18 being on the pictures.
But she can't because she's now tied in with who's the owner of LVMH with her label. So
well, or
I'm sure
someone
that
else. Like,
let's do it. Let's find somebody.
I kind of
Julianne
understand.
Moore, Sandy Newton, someone.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I kind of understand in the context of like, people talk about couture from like a business perspective as like brand building, right? So it's like you show these kind of incredible shows which are, you know, aspirational in the conventional fashion sense. And then those people go on and kind of like buy the diffusion line, or they'll buy, you know, a pair of trainers or a bag. But I don't even really get that with Vardy because it's like the H&M collection is democratic.
I mean, I feel like because he's showing in couture next to the huge brands who are basically selling people perfume and makeup.
Yeah.
I think there's a kind of purity in a way to this, because it really is look at the craft of couture. It's not like, oh, I'm going to send some frocks down there because I need to shift a perfume, you know, or do a perfume.
No.
Does he have a perfume? Does
I
he
don't
have a
think he
perfume?
does. No.
Can we fact check that, anybody? If Varley has a perfume,
I really don't
I'm
know.
not aware of it.
No. He did a collaboration with MAC, which actually makes sense, and it was streamlined. You know, there were like 5 colors,
Okay.
Very straightforward.
sophisticated, nice colors with MAC. It works.
To me, in my eyes, that's why they're in their show notes. It's because it's kind
That's
of
a
like,
candle, isn't it? C'est de triomphe.
okay. Yeah, to me, that's why they kind of were in their show notes, because it was just kind of couture and craftsmanship. Like, they didn't seem to be kind of like a defining theme or like a concept that really needed to be explained. It just seemed to be like taking it back to pure craftsmanship. So it's almost like letting the clothes speak for themselves, I thought.
I mean, people must buy it because this is his main gig. Like, he's known to be a couturier, so someone must buy them because also it's like a cell phone company, right? Like, there's a little share held by someone from LVMH or something, so he must make money somehow with what he does.
Or the signs are, I'm going to flip that, and I don't know if this is a fact. The signs are, if you've got to do an H&M collection and you're doing and you're not doing a couture show that is, you know, a big all-out spend, perhaps
He's in trouble.
perhaps the money isn't there. But I'm not saying that. I'm just reading it from a different perspective. You know, couture is always meant to be the sort of marketing piece of any brand, you know, and ready-to-wear is where they make the money, or in the cosmetics. But what do we think about that? How much money do we really think is really in couture for people?
No idea.
Couture in general, or for
You know, even though we don't know, what's the perception that we have?
couture in general?
Yeah.
I wonder what's the difference between how much it costs and how much they earn with the clothes, because they go for stellar prices, but if that's like 100 times of the cost of making it, then you can do a lot with that money. So even if he sells like, you know, 10 pieces a season, maybe that's enough. I don't know.
I think it really, like, you know, people wearing couture on the red carpet, J-Lo in that huge pink dress, Kendall Jenner. I think the past few years, people, like, you know, the mainstream public really now, you know, they see a big bunch of tool and they're like, Giambattista Valli. I think he's become a household name in the past few years with that, and that's why the people went nuts with the H&M collection. And
Yeah, that's true, because there was a version of the J-Lo dress in the H&M collection, wasn't there? So I guess it's like you can then buy into a designer's vision. I kind of like, this is just me completely off the top of my head, I swear that I've read before that couture kind of breaks even because of the amount of craftsmanship that goes into it. And basically couture is justified as like a diversion, essentially. It's like a brand building exercise to interest people for the cheaper products, but
huge, important brand building exercise.
Yeah.
I would feel that.
maybe the
That's right.
biggest, to be honest.
Yeah, the last massive yellow piece, I was like, oh, well, there's your Rihanna.
Yeah.
You know, that's your...
Oh yeah.
I mean, a lot of these. And also, did anyone sort of think that the masks, I was like, I think I've seen that before somewhere. Wasn't it, I'm trying to think, so Stephen Jones made the masks for Valentino, wasn't it? Those
Yeah, it was
eye
kind of.
masks, or was it Dior?
There was a
Dior.
it was Valentino.
But I was like, I think that, and having done a Varley review here before, somebody else criticized them for the styling, that the styling is always a little bit behind. You know, using this, there were dual headpieces, which I, like masks, that I quite liked.
Do we
But-
know who styled this?
No.
Or
I
who
love the
usually
masks.
works with them? Is there someone who usually does it for them? Or?
I don't know.
I really like the masks. I thought they gave it that pinch of avant-garde that couture and tool needs. Exactly.
I mean, sometimes you don't have to, you can't trademark a look. Maybe it's a thing, it's a kind of, but I did
Erdem's done it as well. Erdem's done masks. So many people have done masks. Valentino, as you said.
But even like you said, that I think a lot of couture tends to pull from the same references. Like, if you look at, I think, mainly across the board, like a lot of the big couture shows that I've seen is always like florals, or like, there are some kind of like couture hallmarks that just recur. I don't think there's much kind of like, I really don't think there's much boundary pushing in couture, honestly. But I don't think that's what people want from it either. So I think you're just naturally going to kind of get these slight regurgitations of a similar look. Even you said like that, the yellow dress, it's guape, like it's very like Rihanna with the Met Gala, like similar color, similar silhouette. It's beautiful and it's incredible, but it's not new, Like
No.
it's not, it doesn't
But
feel
isn't
like
that's a mark of a house? He shouldn't have to reinvent himself every
You'd have to
every
reinvent the
time.
word.
The balloon dresses are new, and those really were my favorite because those were a new addition. He hasn't done those in a while, and actually no one has done that silhouette in a really long time. So
Yeah, true.
I really like them.
They were very beautiful.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the thing, if it's just like,
They're more intellectual than the others are just so obviously pretty, where these are like, a very certain woman is going to wear that and not feel the need to have a conventional.
yeah, and let's be able to
Such a great
Body,
figure.
yeah. I've always argued that why in couture there is not more body diversity, because it's the one time
yeah, you can make it.
you can make it for anybody.
Yeah.
It should be there. I mean, clearly it's not under here, but it's nice to see actually designers hopefully thinking about designing for everybody, because
I don't know, I think body diversity is like the final frontier. Like even when I was at some of the fashion week shows, you see the one plus size model, and normally there'll be a plus size model that has their own reputation, so they become the headline.
yeah.
Like I think of like Paloma at Eckhaus Latte, like because I was at Eckhaus, and then it was like, I was so excited because it was like my first time seeing them, and I was like in New York, and I was like really excited, but then you kind of like, even these kind of like really buzzy kind of diverse brands still kind of...
Even
I mean,
within
McQueen
that,
has done well, slipping that in, and that's what I would expect from a woman, a female-run house with a female casting director. They have, they've put size 10 girls in the show, and it's just like, and you're suddenly like, it's because it isn't a shock factor. You're like, oh wow, there's just some, like larger-looking girls. The fact they're only size 10, when you suddenly see the difference on a catwalk, that becomes mind-blowing.
The thing is, like, I've talked to designers in the past who've said that if they're going to put kind of like a plus size model on there, it has to be done excellently, because then you're going to be, all attention is going to be drawn to that, and therefore if they fall short, they're going to get roasted. Because it's like, if you're going to do kind of one plus size representation, it has to be incredible, or else you look like...
Yeah, like that's what I was gonna say. Like if having a size 10 model is considered plus size, like I hate that. That's sort of depressing. Like every time you see a plus size model in a shoot or a show, it's like a certain shape and size of plus size. It's very narrow. Like people say that Bella Hadid or Gigi Hadid is plus size. Like that's insane. That's crazy.
It's like when you realize how...
It's a little bit less skinny than ones without a big name have to be, I think.
And do we think it's because consistently Valentino does not, but and Pier Paolo was on record saying, if black women in, if there's have a whole load of black women in couture, then my work here is done. I was like, and he doesn't obviously call himself a feminist, but is it a role in fashion? I guess it goes back to the fantasy and non-fantasy argument, to represent women. We're making clothes for women. Is it our job to represent women in every single way we can?
I think so, because you're reinforcing the idea that in this fantasy is very young, thin and white, which isn't really even a reflection of values of society today. And I think that actually, kind of relevant to everything we're talking about, there's real polarity now, if you notice. Like, as you said, a plus-size model has to be really plus-size and really particular, rarely a 10 or 12 or 14, or, black and white. But, like, there aren't really that many Asian and Latin models. No one's really talking about that, or Indian models.
I mean, people are rightly wary of tokenization. I think that's good. But I do think that fashion should represent, because ultimately fashion is like, it's within the kind of cultural fabric of our world. Like, we see things on the runway that trickle down onto the high street, and it informs how we dress, it informs how we view ourselves, it informs advertisements, it informs how we see gender, body, race, everything. Like, so yeah, it does have a huge responsibility, I think, definitely.
Because it's one of the only industries in the world that doesn't have a guiding body. You know, there's a kind of no moral compass in fashion. And some people will say, well, why should it? But I think for all the reasons that you just said.
Well, it's like something has to go really badly wrong for there to be a change. Like, for example, with the whole Terry Richardson scandal, then kind of like editorial boards start putting all of these kind of procedures into place that should have been there. We've seen it with like painfully thin models, we've seen it with underage models. Like, there always has to be a tipping point and then there's change. But it shouldn't be that way, it should just be there already.
And I feel like seeing couture, it's so high art in a way that they feel excused from having to have any of these kind of moral real life guidelines.
Yeah.
But you know, like you said, the trickle-down effect is massive.
Well, their reasoning will always be they don't want the body to distract from the clothes. Like, models are cast as walking mannequins, and if you put a plus-size body in a couture dress, then the focus comes onto the body, not the garment. But once that becomes normalized, that won't be the case anymore. So it is just a case of somebody having to make the statement, other people repeat it, and then it just kind of becoming part of the norm.
It's true, actually, because, you know, the needle has moved, and we don't really think about it, but, you know, I tend to look at a lot of, like, old Vogue editorials for some of my content sometimes, and then I'll look at, like, Vogue Paris. There's some obviously, like, amazing ones with Natasha and Edita, and I love them, but it's very clear that it's like they look dated.
Yeah.
I can't even use them to make a statement. It's like they start to look dated, just because it's so reinforced there, right?
Yeah. Even like how the silhouette of like the supermodel has changed. Like, some of the 90s supermodels actually had kind of like what we would comparatively call now like curves.
91, Cindy Crawford walking for Chanel.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you're like, wow, she had thighs. You know, she was never, she was never neither big nor tiny, but her silhouette was, you know, just coming off the back of the 80s was, you know, incredibly different. And then we sort of had the whole surge of the 90s. And what I kind of like now is that we're not flip-flopping to extremes. I know we're seeing extremes, but it seems we've entered into a period of time that we're normalizing finally. We're not going from one extreme to another. We're sort of trying to fit everybody in there.
The thing is, though, like sometimes those like extremes look incredible. Like Tess Holiday at Chroma, I loved. Like LaShawn for Universal Standard, I fucking loved. And those women are considered like extremes by like the fashion standard, but the fashion standard is so extreme anyway. Like what? Like the sample is like what, size 6 or a size 8? Like that's not like to the kind of like everyday person that would be an extreme. So like it's like fashion has such a warped like Overton window of what's considered normal. Like,
but I'd probably like feel for models that are like in a 10 or a 12, and it's like, no, sorry, you're not thin enough, and you're not big enough. It's like actors who are told they're not black or white enough or this or that enough, but actually it's like the beauty's in the nuance.
Yeah, it's like if you go to the cast and you can't fit the clothes, you're not in the show. Like, that's kind of
I guess that's what it's like.
Yeah.
And so this is a picture of the exhibition. I love how the mannequin is green.
Yeah.
Are they all different colours? I haven't seen.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
haven't
yeah.
seen this. They are. I think that's fantastic.
I like it too.
More than actually, I like the photographs.
I like the sort of tied in with the aesthetic of the pictures, like the pure white space and the painted mannequins. Looks good.
It's a really cool way to show it. Because then I guess like the contrast of like all the mannequins seem quite carefully selected to make the clothes really pop as well. Like the green mannequin under that kind of white laser cut
dress.
dress.
Well, they stuck to the palette, right? The pink,
Yeah.
green, white, yeah.
I mean, do we think this is could be a way forward for couture, or it would just end up the whole week being deadly boring?
I like to see bodies walking around, personally.
I think this is, like, I like it, it's sensible, and like, why wouldn't you do it if you have so much to show off? Like, maybe there should be more that goes with it, like, I don't know, film, or maybe models at the opening, I don't know, but I like the idea that it's on for longer than 20 minutes and people can go in from the public and see it. I think that's a nice thing to maintain, or...
I think it makes sense for different brands to tailor their approach considering what they want. Say, for example, like Chanel, like the whole thing is a gigantic overblown show just to drive people to buy Chanel No. 5. Like, I get that in the context of that, but also if Valli wants to kind of bring craftsmanship back, and I guess also, like, it does seem like he wants to reach more people, and that couture is really an art object.
Honestly, Chanel should do this, because like when you look at their couture pieces, like it's not loud and exciting as this. It's sort of, you know,
Wearable.
Yeah, and then so what makes it more expensive than ready to wear? Like, where is the detail? Like, I would love to see. So why not do something like this instead of like an artificial garden?
It's like as well when Chanel has like the Métier d'Art collection where they just show off like all these incredible artisanal pieces. Like,
Yeah.
That's amazing. Like, it's always a massive spectacle, and I understand why it exists, and I love it. Because
Yeah.
like, you want to see that kind of spectacle around couture sometimes, but also I guess Valli wants to make it more open to the public. And
The one thing I do like about the photos versus the catwalking photos that we're all used to seeing, if you can't be at the show, you don't see the train, for example. You don't get the full, you just get a flat 2D, and people have worked so hard perfecting catwalk shows purely for a 2D image. So I really admire them for putting these out, because at first I was like, wow, what's going on here? Again, like a whole kind of list of like, why is this with no explanation? And I feel like you understand the clothes a bit more because you can see it from a slightly different angle. It's not just a flat angle. It's always magical to be at a show and see the clothes going past. But I kind of love what they've introduced here, which
Unless you're on the stories, you don't see the dimension. Now you see the dimension.
And even then, sometimes if you're at the shows, you get distracted by the stories.
By the what?
By the stories. Because sometimes, like, it's hard because the show is such a small window of time. Like, there's so much build-up and so much. Like, you get in there and you're seated and you're waiting, and then it's, like, done in a flash. And it's almost like even at the shows, everyone's kind of taking videos and stuff, and it's easy to get distracted and not be in the moment even then. And, like, obviously there are resees and things like that, but I think it is a really nice way of considering how people can see the detail, because people put months and months of work into these things. They don't want to just see them for 10 seconds and then it's done, you know? Like.
So do we think this is going to be a hit of Couture Week?
I think
It's tough because there's, you know, how much buzz can a set of photos, essentially in an exhibition, get versus, you know, so maybe they're not going for the Insta hits.
I feel like they themselves weren't even trying to make it that big of a deal. Like, this could be a big deal. Like, oh, it's something different. And I like that it's moving into a direction where we see this as like, these are really expensive, luxurious clothes that less than 1% can afford. So why not make it into like a space for experimentation, maybe, you know, including different bodies, maybe making glass clothes, maybe doing an exhibition or something, instead of following a ready-to-wear format, but with more expensive clothes. But I don't even think that they were like harping on that. They didn't even say much.
I think it's just
like,
nice that they set an example, like, let's just do something different this time, end of story, instead of being like, we're Chanel, we ran out the Grand Palais.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As always. And it's like, it's one of those things.
Go.
I just hope it doesn't go totally unnoticed because they didn't make a big stunt out of it. Because I think it's a valuable like example to follow.
I noticed that Vogue, Anders had his review up before nearly everybody else. So maybe it was just easier to talk about. There wasn't so much noise. You know, there's been a huge chat about the sort of Dior collaboration with the female artist, a female feminist artist, you know, and it's almost like, oh, okay, you having to create a dialogue, if you know, and I'm not going to say it's a faux dialogue, but create a story around clothes that don't really say anything about feminism at all. You know, so it's the packaging again. It's, you know, like it's Dior perfume in packaging. It's the same. The clothes come in the packaging of this rhetoric about feminism.
Well, we live in this age of kind of like this whole peak girl boss feminist narrative, and also like with sustainability greenwashing. And it's like the brands that talk the most often had the least to say. So I think it's really interesting that Giambattista kind of strips it all back and just said, look, it's couture. Like, they're incredible, beautiful clothes that you can come and see up close. Like, that is what couture is. Like, It doesn't always have to be this. Because you'll read press releases and you can tell they've just been reaching and reaching and reaching. And it's like, not everything has to be a grand statement. Like,
yeah, and I really I think we could do away with all of those hackneyed statements, like real clothes for real women with real lives. Like, what does that mean?
And you let people decide that. Like, let's see.
Exactly, and your feminism is about how you live your life and your values and how you treat other women and what you're doing. It's wear whatever you want. Like, my take.
It does kind of feel frustrating sometimes to see, because in these narratives they always get watered down, and it's like people think that having a woman in this position of power, it's an incredible achievement, and Dior is selling incredibly well. But it is always that thing of, it's like people are becoming much, much, much more critical because you have to be.
There's another Italian designer who used this line, making real clothes for real women, but the lookbook, which this accompanies, there's like women on a horse.
Yeah.
They're not even riding the horse, they're just like hanging out with the horse. I'm like, okay.
It's like a regular Saturday.
It's like actually comical.
So do we feel so taking in a lot of these like red carpet dresses, and I feel like people are starting to make a much more interesting statement. The Oscars has always been deadly boring, but I'm kind of feeling like, because also couture for a while was deadly boring as well. But this is kind of, do you feel like this will translate? Because also, I'm obviously like, I have no concept who's going to walk into what must be a state ball or a mask ball, the real couture client, if they would buy a dress that has got like, 25-foot train in sort of acid yellow. But do we feel like which way does it push, fashion or celebrity? So do you think by this kind of really sort of, this is not what, for a woman's everyday life.
Yeah.
So do we feel this would push celebrities to be more bold? Or do you think everyone's still terrified out there?
I mean, I'm still jaded by the Met Gala. Like, I'm like, you had fucking camp as a theme, and like, this is what you come up with. And it just like, it's
because it's like a big fancy dress party, really. It's bowls. But what about actual red carpet dressing?
I think we're going to see a lot of it.
For sure.
Especially the celebrities with good stylists. I think we've already started to see quite a bit of
I think there are a few celebrities who are like competing on the red carpet every time, like who can go bigger and louder.
Yeah.
And this is like a great, array of clothes for them too.
And these are beautiful clothes, like, they're like interesting silhouettes, and I feel like on the red carpet they would make a best dress list for sure. Because they are like statements.
Yeah.
Like, they're still very classic in my eyes, and not particularly like new or like groundbreaking, but then again, fashion doesn't always have to be, especially couture. I think they're beautiful clothes.
I would love to see the balloon dress on the red carpet, something that's not figure hugging.
I really want to see wait and see who sees the balloon dresses.
Who would you, just off the top of your heads, where would you place it? Because I think the model really looks like, God, total head cold here, Lily Depp.
She does.
Yeah,
her.
Yeah.
And
But she's like tied in with Chanel now.
Yeah, no, I know. So because I had to kind of like adjust my eyesight. It was like, is it?
I had the same,
I think Jessica Alba in the balloon dress would be quite nice.
Yes.
Yeah. Jessica?
I want to see like Sarah Paulson.
Sarah Paulson?
Sarah Paulson would be great. Yeah, someone more mature would be super exciting to see.
But it seems like you have to be other, like Tilda Swinton, to be able to get away with anything that's not a kind of very accepted hourglass silhouette.
If it could be anyone, I would love to see, I know, someone like Martha Stewart or someone wearing something like this. It would be everything. But
I think that people are so afraid of the sort of memes in a way, which I think gives them global
Fast
success.
publicity.
You know, if you think of the anybody.
Fried egg Rihanna dress.
Or is it? Or I call it the pizza dress.
I was watching like
Zoe
Gorpé made because Gorpé made like a documentary. She was talking about how hilarious she found the memes. She was like, her first reaction was like, "God, people are so inventive." I never thought of this. And I guess like it makes the look live on, because like especially the award season is so crowded. Like, I think if you can achieve that moment of it's just something memorable. Like, there'll be someone that finds beauty in that dress regardless of whether it looks like an omelette, you know.
It's funny to see how divided people are actually. Gwyneth Paltrow wore this Fendi pre-fall that was a little bit see-through. I forget at the Academy Awards, I think, the other day.
yeah.
And it was such an amazing dress. But
I
even
think she looked really good, and people
it's
hated
amazing.
it.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
I think we might have covered it. Has anybody got anything more burning to say about it? Sometimes when something is so nice, you can't really kind of have a load to say about it because it's just like, it's just beautiful. Let's just live with it.
In my fantasy, though, I think if you did it more like a presentation where you had some of the women that we mentioned that are brand ambassadors or a slight variety of models kind of having a good time with their cigarette holders, kind of. I know maybe it sounds a bit costumey and gimmicky.
Back to like the old school
so
like
cute.
presentation days, where it's like the salons and stuff.
Yeah.
There's so much to do with the casting. Like if they would hire someone like Lotte Volkova to style it, who works with a certain, type of models, like that would make it super exciting because the clothes will always be beautiful and couture and like really nice. And to put them in someone who's not like a young model would be just a super exciting image to look at.
Carolyn Murphy.
Yeah.
Like, to me, I guess this coming straight after the H&M collection signals that couture is in like an in-between state. And because we have people like Balenciaga and Givenchy coming back to the schedule, I think we're really at a point where designers are starting to see new ways to utilize couture, and I think that's really exciting. Because it's been like dead for so long. At least in my eyes, like there hasn't really been anything that I've been like properly seeking out, really checking for. But I think that's changing. It's like even this, like to me, a fashion exhibition is always an incredible way, like to see the clothes up close. And I think moving it into that format, not only is it interesting within the wider context of couture, I think it signals that people are really starting to think about it again as like a brand builder and starting to think about how they can make the most of it. And I think that's really exciting.
A perfect place to stop. Very exciting. Okay, thank you to all of the panelists, and thank you all for watching. For more extensive Fashion Week coverage, be sure to visit SHOWstudio.com. And if you're watching SHOWstudio's YouTube, be sure to like and comment and subscribe below. And we will see you next time.